Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us for our latest LinkedIn webinar hosted by Infobip. And thank you for bearing with us. We had some slight delays, some slight technical issues, but we're all guns blazing now. Firstly, hi, I'm Dave Boddington. I'm the Group Product Manager for RCS and Product Lead for RCS over at Infobip. And I've hosted a number of these webinars so far. We've had some really kind of engaging, thoughtful, positive discussions and some really good feedback about the previous sessions. So I'm really looking forward to this one also. It's expecting it to be a really good one. Given the panel we have with us, so maybe I start by introducing the team that will do all the talking. So firstly, Louis Moynihan, he's founder of Messaging Advisory, and they provide expert consultancy to many notable brands around their use of business messaging, really driving engaging, effective, and impactful conversational experiences. We also have Alex Alamon here, business development lead for RCS in North America over at Google. So the real expert of RCS in the room. And also Chris Brunner, the CEO of Orthea, businesses that's really leading the way in mobile messaging and conversational payment services. So really allowing businesses to go that last mile, particularly in a kind of a transactional retail context, but obviously has input across much more of that kind of messaging space as well. So why are we here and what are we going to talk about today? So RCS, of course, is a headline topic and has been worldwide for a couple of years, and increasingly so in North America over the course of the last year, 18 months. It really is catalyzing the evolution of business messaging on mobile. And so in particular, we want to take a little bit of a dive beyond just talking about the channel itself and to look at what it means for the banking and finance, BFSI vertical. What are the possibilities and the opportunities it brings for businesses in that space? And what are maybe some really good examples about what we're already seeing, those businesses that are already using the channel as well. Before we get into some of the details, and I hand over some of the reins of the talking to our panel, a little bit of housekeeping. You will notice there should be a chat option. So please do feel free to pop your questions, pop your comments in that chat. I'll try and refer to them as we go through. If I do miss them, the wonderful Daya is working behind the scenes to prompt me with a very long, sharp stick in case I miss anything. So I'll be able to bring those in and pass them on to the experts we have here. And there's also a QR code. You should notice that top left, I think. That will lead through to actually one of our latest RCS blogs. And of course, through that, you'll be able to have a look through a lot of other content that we have available and lots of kind of really useful information. When you scan it, it does flash and give off a little noise, and it gives me a little endorphin rush. So it's kind of gamifying the hosting webinar experience for me. So the more you use that QR code, the more energy I have as we go through this session. So please do feel free. So enough of me. Thank you for bearing with me for that intro. And maybe a bit of a kind of a warm up, maybe an easy swing question to you, Alex. First, be really good to kind of maybe start with you. The title of the webinar, SMS versus RCS. Maybe it's a bit of a false equivalence, not really in that sense. It's not a case of one or the other. But as one of the kind of experts in the room with a real fantastic view of the market, not just in the US, but the wider, more global ecosystem, what do maybe you see as those killer features of RCS that really stand it out from the competition?
Yeah, hi Dev. Thanks for the question. So, hi everybody. So yeah, I mean, RCS is just an evolution of SMS, right? It shouldn't be seen as a replacement for it, but it's an evolution. So, as the key feature, obviously, this is a rich branded and conversational channel. So these are the kind of the value proposition, the basics of RCS, or RCS business messaging, or RCS for business, as we call it. And I would say one of the key features is probably that it's available right from your default messaging app, right? So whether it's iOS or Google Messages, you'd get access to it right away when you switch on your phone. So to me, this is probably the most important feature, along with the rich and branded aspect.
So that kind of near ubiquity, that ability to access it without a digital download, it's there. It's what the users are familiar with
Right.
using right now, and
Right,
what businesses
exactly. And
are
so
using.
Right, and so it's easy to kind of upgrade your existing SMS use cases, as we'll see later, but from SMS to RCS and then fall back to existing channels, SMS or MMS. So yeah, you reach ubiquity, and given the penetration, especially in the US here, of iOS and Google Message, now we have we're almost reaching ubiquity just with RCS. So it's very encouraging, very powerful.
For sure. And of course, we see RCS in terms of some of the kind of extended features, the content components that you can include within an RCS message. And maybe that's a good opportunity to kind of bring you into the chat, Louis. Thinking about what an RCS message, an RCS conversation can include, what do you think that means, and maybe in terms of the use cases and the experiences that are now possible with business mobile messaging that perhaps have not been so possible to date?
Yeah, it's a great opportunity. If I had to choose one word to describe RCS versus SMS, I would just use the word rich. It is much richer, and it's much richer in many, many different ways. But if I was a marketer, the richness benefit is in multiple images, carousels, video. And so if I'm a brand, whether I'm doing a brand campaign or a performance marketing campaign, then getting a richer image in front of a user does increase response rate. So I think that's the first no-brainer. And then, of course, there's more sophistication in RCS as a two-way channel. So the other way to think about that is North America is now moving finally from a one-way system into a two-way system, or a one-way channel into a two-way channel. And a two-way channel means that you can actually hear from your customer or prospect what they want. So instead of just blasting stuff out and expecting a click to a website and to fill out a form or to buy something immediately, now you can actually have a two-way conversation. And that just opens up the doors of possibility into many, many use cases.
Yeah, for sure. As you say, you kind of picked up on obviously rich. I mean, yeah, the clues in the name in many ways, and you've got that immediacy. Kind of touched on in Alex's point regarding that default device. You say the response, the effectiveness, the engagement that it brings. As you say, then the conversational piece, that two-way bi-directional messaging, and maybe that's a good kind of segue also then into you, Chris, kind of maybe honing in a bit more tightly around those points, but also maybe a bit more specifically in that BFSI banking finance industry. What do you think RCS brings to those kind of business that are operating in that space?
Yeah, well, I would agree. I would agree with Lewis. I think in the banking and the financial services industry, where most of our most significant partners are, it really comes down to trust, right? That verified merchant, right? That identity. That's when you get into financial services and you're moving money, right? It's one thing in marketing. It's a whole other thing when you start moving money around from consumers to back and forth with merchants and consumers. And so the profound change, and the one we've been waiting for, is the identity aspect of it. All the other stuff to me is bells and whistles, and it's really compelling, and it's going to continue to drive innovation and continue to drive overall success metrics in this market. But that for me is the most dominant one.
Yeah, you've picked up on a really kind of important point, and that we see as well. I'm sure, Louis, Alex, you do as well. Is that trust word? That verification very much does underpin the channel itself, right? And it's effectively one of those core principles of the channel. I think that's fair to say, Alex, right? From that kind of that foundational aspect that Google bringing the channel into market, that trust that comes with the verification and the branding that's visible, that's really kind of core.
Yeah, so verification is a core, obviously one of the core value of RCS. So before a brand can actually join in and launch an agent on RCS, there's a verification process that's actually managed by verification of third-party verification authorities who work hand in hand with the carriers to kind of provide this token-based verification and make sure that the business is legit. So this is a really key feature and key attributes of RCS. On top of that, I don't know if we'll have a chance to speak on it, but also the security aspect, and that's to me very relevant in the BFSI industry. So yeah, and I would add just something, one more thing that is actually really important on the feature is the ability to measure any interaction between the brand and the agent and the user, right? So not only you can I mean, I think to Chris's point, or Louis' point, you just don't broadcast any messages and expect a response. You can actually measure your ROI and any interaction with the agent. So this is a very powerful way for a marketer to actually measure the outcome of the campaign or the engagement from the user from that perspective. So
yeah, and maybe that's picking in kind of part of the next question I kind of wanted to pick up with you on around is those businesses that you're seeing, your colleagues are seeing, that are integrating RCS into their kind of existing communications or their existing or new communications. Those that are doing that effectively, what are the what is it that helps them to achieve that success, and maybe kind of measurement is one of those points.
Right, exactly. So this is one of the key things that brands are interested in, and I think to your point, I mean, kind of the approach from an enterprise perspective onto RCS adoption is, as we've seen, it's an evolution of SMS and not a replacement for RCS. So brands tend to evolve their existing SMS use cases from one way, onboard them onto RCS, and you will get all the benefits of the channel. So branded, obviously rich, and so you have a better text messaging with the brand's name and the logo, and then from there they evolve to new use cases. So they add on new features. So we recommend this kind of crawl, walk, and run approach, where the brands actually go from one way to two-way messaging as they learn about the channel. So
yeah, can I just go back to the first question, because you guys, Chris was right. Like, if you're in financial services, being trustworthy is the number one thing. And so the richness of the profile, I think we can kind of just double click on that just a little bit. So if I'm a bad actor and I want to scan somebody, and I go to an aggregator and I register a short code for the Mickey Mouse Club, and then I put Wells Fargo text with a scam link in it, I can do that with short codes. And the short code does not have an identity. Whereas on RCS, Wells Fargo has an identity. It is branded, it is rich, it is verified, and there is a huge distinction between the two. And so as the industry moves from short codes into a rich profile and a rich identity for Wells Fargo that is monitored and verified, that is just a game changer for financial services.
Yeah. No, I think you're absolutely right. And I guess maybe, Chris, from your side as well, then, just kind of say, triple clicking down on that point a little bit, is that the kind of thing that you're hearing from the clients that helps give them that degree of confidence and reassurance? And kind of, if maybe there's a degree of trepidation or uncertainty around kind of SMS, are those concerns assuaged with RCS and some of those kind of features?
I think as the market's getting their arms around RCS, I think there's still a lot of folks that don't know what RCS is out there. So we speak about that now in every customer engagement. We almost lead with it. I think the banks have always been a little bit reticent to use SMS for a lot of the reasons that we've outlined here. I mean, obviously two-factor auth and security protocols are what they're primarily used for. I think you're going to see a fundamental shift in the marketplace as RCS starts to grow, where today messaging companies like Infobip might work in the marketing, the customer service, the two-factor auth. getting dragged in across the organization, right? As commerce and more becomes a bigger part of is it customer acquisition? Is it registering somebody for a new lease form? Is it getting a card on file? Is it helping put up a payment plan? And you start talking to every element of that organization. Now, I do think we work with most of the big banks and are partnering with them. I don't see them leading with that with RCS this year. I think they're going to do a wait and see. But they are certainly bringing us into some of their biggest brands in order to kind of get it out in the market and get it tested and really start to see some white papers come back in about, hey, what's the difference here in running SMS versus RCS, and where are we seeing lift? And is it delivering as promised? And so early data says that it is, and will continue to get even better. I think the banking industry is going to move slowly, but I think once they move, they will move quickly. And I think early next year, you'll start to see the banks get highly involved in this.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Well, there's a number of good points you kind of pick up there. One thing I wanted to maybe talk about a little bit is that one, awareness. I think we see that in other markets as well. It's has historically been a challenge. I think Apple coming into the ecosystem is made a significant difference there. Users see the letters RCS in the edit for their peer-to-peer messaging, as well as messages they're receiving from brands as well. So I think there's almost like a kind of learning by osmosis that could be taking place.
I think the beauty of RCS, unlike other products launches I've been around, is this one over the next 2 quarters is going to start showing up on everybody's phone, right? And you're going to start to see a whole new level of engagement and richness. And everyone, whether you're a marketer, whether you're a CFO, whether you're whatever you are in the ecosystem, are going to be bombarded with these richer, better user experiences. And the questions are going to come hard and fast, back to companies like you that says, hey, why does my text look like this? And why aren't I doing that? And I think it's this kind of organic growth that we're going to see take place over the next year that is really exciting.
Yeah, I'd love to take the opportunity to talk about North America market and RCS. It's fascinating what's happened, frankly. And Alex, correct me where I'm wrong, but RCS protocol has been around for many years, right?
Right. More than 2 years, yeah.
Yeah, and I think there's been a lot of acceleration with the protocol and the standard bodies globally, which is progress globally. But I think what's really interesting in North America is Apple iOS allowed RCS to land on iPhones as of September last year, and that triggered a domino effect where Verizon immediately went live with RCS for business messaging, and T-Mobile and AT&T followed within a quarter or two. And now the top 3 telco carriers in North America allow business messaging to be sent over RCS with a fallback to SMS. And I think what's crazy about this market right now is we basically went from 0 to 60 in a few months, and business messaging and two-way and the richness, all the richness across all the dimensions are now available to brands and financial services companies in North America. And so, Chris, I think to your point, it will be a case where you're going to start seeing your competitors show up in a richer way and wondering, how did they do that? And it kind of comes back to the Apple decision, and then Verizon, T-Mobile, and AT&T.
Yeah, and I think that we should never underestimate the power of a C-level stakeholder seeing something on their phone, particularly if they see their competitor with an RCS message that appears on a phone. Well, that gets very real FOMO, and that gets the top-down pressure, which paired with the bottom-up pressure that can be applied, really then driving uptake of the channel. So I think you're all right. There's going to be that kind of snowball effect that's really starting to build a little bit.
Yeah, well, this is what we've seen in other markets when one of the top players in one vertical start to use the technology, the channel, others follow. And so to your point, Dave, yeah, there's a lot of kind of competition within the same vertical to get access to the same technology. So yeah, we're really we are seeing a huge demand already, and we're really excited about the big brands that are already using the channel and the ones that are the upcoming ones, I would say.
Sorry,
Yeah, in my years at WhatsApp and seeing WhatsApp business messaging rolling out in other countries globally, the other thing to note is banks and telcos are a catalyst set of verticals in a given country for business messaging. When the banks and telcos start using it, then there's a huge knock-on domino effect that happens afterwards. And we're starting to see that. Verizon is eating its own dog food and using RCS for its own campaigns. And so the domino effect has happened. It's started.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's maybe an interesting time to bring in a question that's kind of from the audience, from Jack. Thanks for dropping the question in. I'm going a little deeper. Is there concern about SMS volume dropping versus RCS when migrating customers into RCS? I guess it's maybe a question for the carriers as much as it is for this audience. So the last thing we would do without a carrier on the panel is to speak on their behalf. I think we could probably all speak from experience of our interaction with carriers. I can certainly speak from experience of working with carriers across many markets, that there's an absolute desire for them to support the channel. And I think I would certainly suggest one of the most interesting things that, and maybe Louis, some of the experience you've got, will be really interesting on this point. One of the things that we're particularly seeing is RCS allows you to shift the conversation around from maybe the commoditized transaction of what does the message cost and what's your delivery rate, into actually what return am I getting on that? How effective, you touched on this earlier, how effective is it? What's my ROI? What's my ROAS? If you look at it in a BFSI context, how many of my consumers are responding within a minute to my fraud alert? Those kind of elements, those start kind of more measurable outcome-based conversations rather than just cost-based conversations. I think really where RCS allows you to go, one, because of the richness, but also two, because of the measurability you get with it.
Yeah, in fact, we've seen clients who do really well on MMS. They have beautiful images, great copy, great CTR, great ROI, and so MMS is a pretty good product, frankly, but it does not have two-way, and never mind video or brand identity, and there's a lot that it doesn't have. But I think marketers, talking about the marketing buyer, and Chris can talk about the trust and the authentication buyer too. But talking about the marketing buyer, the ROI on SMS is campaign based. You send out 100,000 SMSs to 100,000 users. You measure the CTR and the conversion rate and the revenue. It's pretty linear, and it's worked for decades. I think the difference is the ROI calculation for RCS is completely different. Yes, there is a linear element. Did you get a better click rate? Did you get a better ROI? But now that you're starting to introduce two-way and richness interacting with a video, the interaction of the video is worth something more than just the conversion, because there's a lot of brand awareness and perception that you're gaining from it. Never mind the fact that two-way now allows the user to go, hey, I don't really want to see that video right now. Right now, I have this issue. How can you help me solve this issue? And so the two-way opportunity is allowing a brand to work with the customer and delight the customer. And that is priceless. And it's a different ROI calculation.
Yeah, no, absolutely for sure. Maybe it's a good time to almost kind of dig into the okay, but how? I think we touched on some of the kind of the elements of the ecosystem and how that, particularly in the US, how that's kind of grown from last year, as I mentioned earlier. Verizon being the first carrier on board to adopt the channel and to enable messaging. All three of the main MNOs now support RCS, as well as a number of the other MNOs and MVNOs as well. So in terms of the kind of the audience reach is significant, and I'll kind of maybe defer to Alex briefly to touch on that. But also the penetration we're seeing with iOS and Android both supporting RCS messaging. We're seeing a penetration rate. Well, I think Louis, you've kind of referred to some of the delivery rates you're seeing on some of the brands you're working with. Really positive.
Yeah, delivery rates are awesome. Actually, in general, every metric is exceptions, but with optimizations, every metric can be better.
Yeah. So maybe Alex,
what we've seen on just on maybe you reach, right? You wanted to talk about reach, Dave, first. So on reach, obviously, since we've seen a huge uptick this year with the adoption of Verizon, T-Mobile, and AT&T, and as you mentioned, the long tail carriers as well in the US. So we're reaching close to I should say 70 to 80% RCS penetration without disclosing any numbers, but this is really one of probably the main reach channel in the US now. And back to the comment from Louis on the actual performances, we've seen on average a 50 to 150 increase in click-through rate from existing SMS campaigns, and which converts into about 30% more conversions on average across all the campaigns. So just to speak about the performance of the channel.
Yeah. Well, that's brilliant. It's really nice because it steps into a question that's been asked in terms of how users typically respond to RCS messages. Do they understand the difference between RCS and regular SMS, and do they trust and engage with them in the same way as they do SMS? I'd kind of maybe, just before kind of throwing that out a little bit, I'd kind of actually challenge a little bit of the premise of the question itself. Do consumers understand the difference? Actually, they don't need to. That's the point, is that the message is in their inbox. It's a message from a brand. So do they recognize that it's a branded message? Yes, because there's the logo at the top of the screen and they can see that check mark. But actually, do they need to really know this is an RCS message? They don't need to. But yeah, I mean, Lou, you touched on some of the kind of the performance metrics that you're seeing in terms of all looking positive. Is there anything you can kind of share about any specifics around that?
So I think everything is positive is the summary. But I'll give you an anecdote that is counterintuitive and maybe looks a little negative, just to kind of show some context. We had a situation where a really good MMS campaign had really high CTRs and conversions, and the RCS equivalent when we first started did not perform as well. Same image, and of course there's a button in the RCS. There's no button in MMS, and we had a situation where the CTR was lower in RCS. It turns out, and this is the going theory, I wouldn't say it's 100% proven, but I'm pretty confident on it. Users have been using SMS for so long that they see 100 characters of text and a blue link, and they'll either click on the blue link if they don't think it's a scam, or they won't click on the blue link if they think it's a scam. That's pretty much how binary user behavior is with SMS today. With RCS, you have the ability, you have options, you have buttons, you have cards. There's a lot more you can do with it, but there is a little bit of user education needed that you can actually click a button now in the RCS channel. And so there is a little bit of, I think, user behavior stuff we're going to have to work through, as well as maybe a little bit of education. But all of those things ended up with higher conversions and higher dollar value as well. So again, the net is it's all positive, but there are some kind of weird things that happen that we have to work through.
For sure, for sure. And I think that, sorry, Alex, please.
No, yeah, I was just to add to this. I mean, most of the brands are actually adding chipsets, suggested reply into their basic message now. So to just to show the actual the actual feature and kind of prompt the user to engage with the agent. So yeah, so to your earlier point, how can I find out whether it's SMS or RCS? Yeah, you don't need to know it, but like you can really leverage those kind of basic features, suggested replies, to drive that engagement. So I think it's an important one to remember as a brand when you design your first.
Absolutely, and I think that kind of that learning about the experience, and Louis, the point you touched on regarding kind of those that test, it's the same applies, that test and learn. The channel is a new channel. I think I talk quite a bit about kind of the establishment of a market, those that are emerging versus established in RCS, but there is also a maturity that is not necessarily directly tied to whether the channel is established. The sophistication of the governance and compliance that sits around the channel from a carrier perspective, but also actually from an ecosystem and value chain perspective, the understanding of the channel, what you can do with it, and the like. And we're at step 1 or 2 of many. I think and this kind of tees on with Connie's question that she's kind of mentioned in chat, and I'll come over to you, Chris. I'll give you a warning that I'm coming your way shortly. She talks about having successful activations on SMS right now, not yet able to get into the RCS channel. I think it's worth kind of like highlighting that exactly that point. RCS is new, and it's not just new for InfoBip and the like, and for brands. It's actually new for carriers. There's a lot of understanding that carriers need to do globally, not just in the US, around the channel, how it's going to be used, how they need to make sure that it retains its place as that trusted channel. And at the moment, the carriers are working that through with their DCAs, with the CTIA, and as a collective group, as well as with Google and the like, and others in the industry. So it's going to be a bit of a burn, but that burn will accelerate. So maybe say good opportunity to kind of swing over to you, Chris, in terms of what you are seeing in the banking financial services industry. What success are you seeing? What really good use case are you seeing? What interest are you seeing?
Yeah, so we are seeing, actually, it's a great question, right? It's one that I think has been out there for a while. I think the answer to that is it's the carriers, right? It's the carriers that, for whatever, have built this as a non-sanctioned use case, if you will. I do think, and I mentioned this earlier, that we've got one in the collection space that's going live on RCS as we speak. There seems to be some lightening up of that, as if you can prove and build the use case and the data, the NPS scores, like the overall reality of kind of what that campaign has looked like to consumers and that you've treated them correctly. I don't understand the blanket whitewashing of the space, but I do think there's a path forward, and I'd love to hear from an InfoBip perspective why you think the carriers, to date at least, are kind of treating it that way.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's probably a few different factors involved here, and this will vary by carrier for sure. So, certainly not kind of wanted to again speak on their behalf, but as I touched on, I think it's a new channel, and I think as with new channels, they want to learn about the behavior of the channel, understand what they can do in terms of the wider ecosystem, as well as some of maybe their technical and operational constraints and the governance that sits around that. And whilst there's a lot to be learned, and I think it's important to note that the US is very far ahead of many markets in terms of the degree of compliance that sits around their SMS ecosystem. The carriers work extremely hard on that, but it's not possible to do a direct pick and shift over to RCS. So I think there's a fair bit of kind of learning and understanding, and maybe risk aversion, at least in the early days.
That's what it is. What I think changes with RCS, right, is what you haven't seen historically or traditionally in SMS is commerce, right? There's been a limited amount of commerce that has taken place over those rails. And I think as RCS comes in and having payment orchestration and having the ability to use, PayPal and Venmo and Google and WhatsApp and, any kind of channel, any kind of payment credential, any kind of payment processor, that it completely blows this channel open in a way that I don't think the carriers have even thought about, right? This becomes the next big e-commerce wave, because who's going to want to be sending emails? Who's going to want to be sending, making phone calls when I can get right into Alex's inbox with a rich message, a simple way for him to set up a payment plan or make a payment, sign a document, like something, and then chat with me and then get out. Like, I just think this is such a profound change in this channel that we're going to look back in 5 years and none of us will have realized how big of an impact it hit across the entire industry. And payments is going to lead that, because once you get marketers involved and you get CFOs involved and you get all these different, whether it's a call center or it's a delivery service or whatever, this channel is going to explode. And I think that's going to drive the carriers to understand the value of letting other areas play in this space as well. Trusted players.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'll come to you, Louis, just a little bit, because I sense you're poised to build on that. But I think just kind of to close off on some of that point around where we are and where carriers are, I'd say I think there is a degree of risk aversion. I mean, I would much rather, as an ecosystem, we are on the side of caution than the opposite, and we relinquish the reins and we damage the channel, because I wouldn't want the channel to be damaged, for sure. But there's also the consideration that in a kind of SMS world, carriers have ultimate control, right? They can pull the plug on all traffic, a certain DCA's traffic, a certain brand's traffic. They can just pull the plug. And yes, they have absolutely, there's controls they have within the RCS ecosystem for sure, but it's different because there's other parties at play that are involved in, from a technical as well as kind of an operational perspective. So it is again a different paradigm for carriers. I think it just takes a little bit of working through. But as you say, it's that kind of that example, that success. We talk about measurability. The ultimate measurability is something being bought for a brand in many cases. Well, if you can make that purchase in messaging and that last mile become a last yard, wow, then you get real success there. But yeah, sorry, Louis, I kind of maybe I sense you wanted to kind of pick up maybe on Chris's last point as well.
Yeah, and if I get too far into the telco carrier stuff, please stop me. But I have 2 points: one, telco carrier, and one, how the AI tech stack actually affects this as well. But so in my time at WhatsApp, I got some of the biggest telcos carriers in the world on WhatsApp API, using it, eating the dog food, and also reselling it as well. So I have some kind of channel experience here that runs in parallel. If you kind of go back 20 years, the telco carriers in most countries made a lot of money from personal SMS, friends and family sending SMS. And in North America, as we all know, that went to, you just got unlimited SMS into your package, right? So the consumer SMS is not making any money for telcos anymore. However, the business messaging side of SMS has exploded and is a huge revenue driver for telcos. So it's fair that they are a little sensitive to the revenue generation of the last few years and its growth, because it's still growing. And then on the other side, it's like, well, there's a lot of bad actors, there's a lot of scamming. And so if there's an alternative, richer protocol, is it also richer in security? And can they grow that channel where maybe SMS might be hitting a ceiling? And so that's not an easy conversation to have inside of any telco. So I think we have to be, and I'm saying this to myself too, I have to be more patient with the telcos and the carriers. This is a big business decision. And so, and it's not a simple conversation. It's very complex, and I'm making it sound simple.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think I use this word advisedly. The frustration around brands wanting to use the channel can only be a good thing, because there is that demand for it. And yes, I think we would love to be in that position where carriers were kind of onboarding as many of these kind of really interesting use cases as possible, and everything was completely joined up. We're not quite there yet. We will get there, and I don't think any of us doubt that. For me, as far as I'm concerned, there's an inevitability to it. But it's just, yeah, I think there's making sure the channel grows in the right way for sure.
Yeah. And then, sorry, Chris mentioned imagine doing e-commerce on two-way messaging, and what a huge opportunity that is for telco and carriers and the industry at large, and financial services. There is a rocket ship happening right now that we all know of, Gen AI and LLMs. And so it's getting the problem is actually going to become more acute, because user behavior is such that they won't even want to go to a website to do e-commerce in the future, because everything is moving to chat. And guess what? RCS, WhatsApp, Apple are all chat-based channels, and Gen AI and LLMs being blended into that in a tech stack becomes incredibly powerful for a user experience and ease of use for the customer. And so SMS cannot keep up with that type of innovation and what's happening in the next 3 years. So if I'm a telco carrier and I'm looking at my crystal ball, I'm like, well, what are we going to do? We have to move forward, and we have to create a revenue model that is future-proof and not a revenue model that is built in the past. And I think Gen AI is an accelerant there.
Yeah, absolutely. That kind of that humanization of conversational experiences on messaging is going to be really say catalytic in that sense. And I think that's a whole nother webinar. We'll have you back for the next one, Louis, for sure. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Obviously, again, kind of focusing on, and it's not just within the BFSI vertical, but it's maybe more acute. There is we talked about, Chris, you talked about trust earlier, absolutely, and that degree of trust that a bank or financial institution may or will want to have around the channel they're using. And of course, there's a whole load of paperwork that sits around that in the SMS space. Of course, in the RCS space, again, that's they want to ensure it's not just about the logo, it's not just about the tick, it's about understanding how messages are processed, how the data is processed, and the like. And maybe that's an opportunity, Alex, for you to kind of reference in terms of that degree of compliance, that confidence that can be taken by, like say, not just the BFSI vertical, but all businesses in terms of how their data is managed and used when they're supporting RCS messaging.
Yeah, so I would say the RCS channel is compliant with is ISO certified, is SOC 2 or SOC 3 compliant, and so obviously this is a carrier grade channel, and so the data that transit through the channel is obviously secure and secured in this way. An important point is obviously, as we talked about it, the fact that to use the business as a channel, you need to be a verified alleged business, and before launching an agent, the agent would go through the verification process. And so, ensuring that the agent is actually compliant with the AUP, as we call them, user policy of the either Google but also the carriers, and so making sure that the use case is also legit. So, in that sense, RCS is a secure channel; it's compliant, and it follows the same rule as the TCPA, the SMS rule that apply, to SMS in the US. And so, for example, for a marketer, you want to make sure that you cannot send messages, or you have to send messages within a specific time window. You have to ensure that the user has opted into before sending a message to them, so proper consent and opt-in from the user. Giving the users the ability as well to opt out at any time. So we have implemented, for example, on Google Messages, we have a feature called subscribe, and so the user can basically easily opt out of an agent if they want. So there's this whole set of features that leave the control to the user, but also ensuring them that the channel is actually secure and they're engaged with a real business. So all that plays into the trust aspect and also the security of the channel.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that I would also take the opportunity to kind of, it's kind of leaning back into one of the points previously about the channel learning and evolving. And I think what's really positive, because you touched on a point there in terms of the unsubscribe features that's being rolled out on Android devices. The benefit of this ecosystem is that those kind of features can be rolled out, and yes, there's the relevant kind of process and governance that sits around carriers and the GSMA, as well as working with the carriers and Apple, Google, and other players in the ecosystem. But that's those kind of additional controls to improve a user's experience, but also better safeguard a user's experience is really important. And again, just pick up on another point, the verification. The US is the first market that, and learning from its SMS experience, third-party verification of all brands that come into the ecosystem. So that's not carrier driven, that's not aggregator driven, that's third-party independent verification that's carried out on all brands. That is rolling out into other markets. The UK have started doing that for some of the carriers already, but US is very much in the benchmark, and that's where I talked maybe earlier about maybe some of that maturity that we've seen. And again, maybe just leaning over to you, Chris, just kind of on that point, on as we start to wrap up a little bit, that understanding, kind of picking up on what Alex talked about, understanding about how the channel is carrier grade and meets the relevant requirements, just as SMS does. Those businesses that are working in SMS right now, that provides a degree of reassurance to them, right? Again, kind of leaning into that trust point you mentioned earlier as well.
I think that's interesting. I think I almost look at it the other way. I think there are so many brands that don't lean in on SMS in a meaningful way, right? They throw some budget at it. They do a little bit here and there. But when you look at the depth and breadth, like we talk to a dozen companies every week in the mid-market, enterprise group. They all have some sort of messaging parameter set up, and they do some work in messaging, but it's not across their organization. Half the time they don't know who runs it and why they run it and what they do. And I think this is the game changer. I think this is the catalyst that moves it, forget email, right? Forget IVR. Like this, I think becomes, and I think to Louis' point, with chat, right? With AI-driven chatbots, with RCS and richness enabled there, the digital economy on the device, I think, is going to take off through these communications channels in a way we haven't seen. And that's the key takeaway: security, compliance, identity, commerce, AI, all of that's converging at the same time, and it's converging on 8 billion devices globally, right? What's more exciting than that? For me, that's that's what really gets us up every single morning, is how powerful this channel is going to be over the next 12 months.
Yeah, no, absolutely. All keeps us hosting webinars until late in the evening, whichever one it is, Chris. And that's you've almost kind of done the wrap up, or kind of close the remarks for me, which is great, because we're getting close to time. But I do want to kind of sign off. We've had a few scans on the QR code, which is great. They are promises to me that I'm allowed to have some lunch tomorrow. If we get another couple, that would be amazing. But yeah, Chris has kind of wrapped up a little bit there, which is fantastic. But maybe Alex, Louis, also any kind of closing remarks you'd have. I mean, we've covered a lot of topics and a lot of items here, but maybe if you were to kind of wrap up, maybe your thoughts, Alex.
Yeah, so I think adoption is here, demand is here, reach is here. We've been waiting for that, be in that situation for such a long time. So right now it's really an exciting time for RCS, specifically in the US. And so we encourage brands to try it, and so to build novel use cases to leverage all these features. And maybe as a closing remark, to Louis' point before, you can tie your agent to, conversational experience using, Gen AI and AI in general. So, which, opens up to many more use cases, including customer care, for example. So to have, seamless interactions with your agent powered by AI, which increase the customer satisfaction, and in general, creates better experiences than, having to wait on the phone. So, there's a set of new features, a set of new use cases that are gonna launch on RCS, and that we are still to discover. So really exciting opportunity, really exciting time, and so looking forward to
and I love that point actually, and it kind of referring back to Jack's question from earlier around SMS, dropping SMS revenues and versus RCS. I think the bigger picture, as well as that kind of outcome-based conversation, is actually new use cases. Exactly what you said there, Alex. Those, as you say, outbound calls that don't need to be made, mobile apps that don't need to be maintained, email that doesn't need to go and sit in a junk folder or sit unread for 2 weeks. All of these opportunities that RCS brings you. So, I think that's a really, really good point, Alex. Maybe Louis, to kind of wrap up in the couple of minutes we have left.
So if there's anyone listening that wants to try RCS,
I thought you were going to finish the sentence there. If there's anyone listening,
yes, anyone listening, I think there's an execution piece here that we should at least touch on, and maybe it's a different webinar. But if you start and you do an RCS campaign and it doesn't work, don't walk away. There are some complications right now that everyone on this phone works through every day, but new brands hit this head on, and that is you have to build for the RCS protocol that also works on iOS devices. 60-70% of the devices in North America are iPhones, and this is the opportunity. You can now get a richer experience on any phone, Android or iOS, but you have to build your first set of campaigns in a very test and learn way. So I would just say test and learn, and it does work. It works way better. There is some tweaking that has to be done. If it doesn't work first time, don't walk away from it. This is an amazing channel, and we will remember 2025 as the year that this explodes.
Yeah, that's another really, really good point. I think, can you imagine the time and hours that's been poured over getting email right and testing and learning and A, B, C, D, E, F testing and the like. And so you're absolutely right. The first email blast didn't work. The fifth didn't work, but everyone got better. And I think the proof points are absolutely there. So looking at the time, that long sharp stick there is poking me in the ribs right now. It probably just leads me to, firstly, thank the panel. I think it's been a really, really good conversation, and we've probably covered enough points, and we could probably sit here talking for another 2 or 3 hours for sure. But you guys need to probably pop off and have a drink and something to eat for sure. I'm sustained just by QR clicks, so I'm good. But also, obviously, thank the audience. Thanks for sticking with us. Thanks for engaging on chat, listening, and obviously this recording will be available on LinkedIn for a period, and so we'll be sharing the hell out of it as much as we can for sure. And of course, there will be further webinars in due course. So yes, thank you so much to everyone. And Chris, Louis, Alex, we will talk very soon, I'm sure. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Bye.